Yeah, so first things first, I want to talk about the current state of the launch industry, the launch market. The launch market is the next big space sector that is rapidly growing to a bubble that will pop eventually. In fact, it was really interesting. Tory Bruno today said the exact same thing. If it wasn't today, it was a very recent tweet of his. He very recently said, after somebody talked about Vector, he said that there are over like 150 upcoming launch startup companies, and there is not room in the current state of space industry for 150 new launch markets to come online. There's not. And unfortunately, if you haven't heard, Vector Aerospace, Vector Launch Systems, just filed for bankruptcy this previous week. And so Vector, who was actually very promising, they were targeting a launch market like sub 100 kilograms to space, at least for their first vehicle that you can see here. They were also having concepts for a much larger vehicle. Actually, I think a heavy version of this. Anyways, for a larger vehicle that could also carry a few hundred kilograms into orbit. They went under, unfortunately. That was a little unexpected, because starting a couple months ago, basically Vector had to lay off all of the company employees, and they said that currently they'll be, going behind their back end and actually try and see if they can save the company and whatnot. And then finally, this past week, we now realize that that whole business on the back end of trying to save the company was really working with the investors and seeing what parts of the company they could sell off to get their money back. So Vector is officially pretty much no more. In fact, what was really interesting is some of the technology that Vector was working on that wasn't actually part of launching satellites was actually developing satellites. They were working on what's called as software-defined satellites, that they just were developing a system that could be put on board of an existing satellite that would allow any user to upload software to it to either test software based on what was already on board or to define a new mission for that satellite. We have a new launch company startup that just finished their seed round of $17 million that they're looking at small launch vehicles. They're actually going to be a direct competitor to Firefly, around the 1-ton capacity to orbit, if I remember correctly. They're called ISAR AEROSPACE out of Germany. If you're looking at this and seeing Falcon 9, you would be correct, because the lead engineer behind this company is an ex-SpaceX employee. But yeah, so this is out of Germany. This is a new launch company coming up with a Falcon 9 derived small launch vehicle. This thing will have 9 engines, utilizing propellant that I don't think they've actually come out and specified what it is. They're just calling it like green propellant. So we'll see what that actually means. That could mean a whole lot of things. That could mean that they're just using some sort of... no, they said they're using some sort of hydrocarbon-based green propellant. I'll link this up in chat if any of you want to take a read. Otherwise, we can actually go straight on in to the actual launch vehicle itself, which, like I said, looks very familiar, and understandably so, to actual Falcon 9. It has 9 engines that they're calling the Aquila engine class. 1,000 kilograms, right? That's a 1 ton to space to LEO. That's on the order of magnitude of both Fireflies, Firefly Alpha, and Tehran from Relativity Space. But we're going to have three coming online, 3 launch companies with their first rocket coming online within a couple years of each other. All of them with like the exact same capacity, which is going to be really interesting to see how that competition goes. Again, it will probably completely come down to availability and price point for their launches. Because as Tory Bruno said recently, right, and as we all know, the launch bubble is going to come popping one day, and who knows who's going to be standing at the end of it, right? Because this right here is 3 rockets, 3 companies, same capability. 10 engines total, 9 on the first stage, 1 on the second stage. All of them Aquila engines, so basically using the same engine, right? One's just vacuum optimized, one is just normal, systems. And this is what I was talking about. It says it uses a light hydrocarbon with liquid oxygen to drastically reduce environmental impact. So they're calling it a green propellant. Hydrocarbon plus liquid oxygen. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're still a couple years away from actual launching. In fact, I believe the article had like late 2021 as their first launch, if everything goes well. Maybe mid 2021. We'll see if that slips. You know, one thing to note, right, is complexity scales. Not linearly, but it scales with size. And, you know, basically having somebody that's already done a lot of the infrastructure involved with Falcon 9, being your inside man on developing a very similar approach to a launch vehicle, maybe they'll be able to keep that launch date. I believe that article actually states that the 17 million that they got will basically get their first prototype operational, but then they'll have to raise more if they actually want to launch it, or at least get contracts from customers to launch it. One of those, like the 17 million isn't full funding to launch, but it's like enough to basically make all the infrastructure and everything they need to get to the next point of actually launching. We have the European Space Agency, as being one of the top supporters in space debris cleanup, has now fully funded a mission for Clear Space 1, 117 million euros, chat. That's million euros. That's over 130 million United States dollars. That's going to happen in 2025, which is really interesting. So Clear Space mission 1 is coming online. Their actually first mission is going to go after an Ariane Space Vega upper stage. A lot of incentive is now being pushed towards not developing the technologies. Technologies already exist for space debris cleanup. They already exist. Robotic arms, rendezvous, both collaborative and uncollaborative docking and capture, and of course propulsion, right? We already have all those technologies. We've already developed vehicles that can use those technologies together, right? But there's no actual incentive, even now with all this money being dumped into actual orbital space debris cleanup, to make an actual business out of it. Nobody in the aerospace industry wants to pay for a satellite to be removed or for space debris to be removed. I mean, as bad as that kind of sounds, right? There's no incentive. There's no closing business case. The only people who would ever pay for it, at least as of right now, is government. And you cannot, it's very, very difficult to close a business case and actually stay a functioning business when your sole customer is the government. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is because that kind of segues into a couple other missions that are currently underway for orbital space debris cleanup, such as Astroscale. And that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up, that orbital servicing, right, and actually being able to clean up space debris, there's so much money being given out that I really kind of feel like the industry needs to focus. There are so many concepts being developed right now, so many different startup companies that are coming out with new ways to clean up space debris, and they're all getting funding, and nobody is actually focusing on like, hey, this is a technology that can actually work. It can fly today. We should do missions and actually test it out, right? Astroscale is doing just that. They actually have a mission going up right now, that's really loud, called ELSA D, or the End of Life Service for Astroscale Demonstration. They're doing a demonstration mission solely based on cleaning up space debris. Until government mandates it and there's regulations involved, which currently there's no press there to do so, minor press to do though. So yeah, this is Astroscale. This is their demonstration. Basically, it consists of their space debris cleanup vehicle, which uses magnets, by the way, a magnetic docking system, to capture just a small satellite that's just meant to have reaction wheels and be able to station keep and that sort of thing. But this is their dummy defunct satellite, and they're testing their infrastructure involved for cleaning that system up, and they're testing both collaborative and uncollaborative docking. So this one would be an uncollaborative docking scenario, right, where they're actually matching. This is actually really cool. They're matching a tumbling satellite's relative motion to be able to dock to it. We got to match the spin on all three axes in order to dock to it. But it's actually really cool. I mean, this is something that they're actively working on, and this is set to launch in the next, pretty soon. I want to say in the next year. Like next year it'll be launching. So they already have full funding. They already have full funding and that sort of thing. But that's Astroscale. That's Astroscale. So there's a lot of different companies coming online trying to get into the space debris cleanup scenario. And honestly, I just feel like we need to start really like narrowing down the technologies and actually start pushing for demonstrations. Because no matter what, currently there's still no market for it. So at the end of the day, might not even be worth it. At least yet, chat. Not until something changes. All right, the last topic that I wanted to cover today was the OFT Boeing Starliner will be launching December 20th, chat. That's 5 days. 5 days away, which is pretty awesome. It's actually like 4 days and 12 hours from like this second, which is actually pretty cool. So yeah, December 20th, 6:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, OFT will be launching. This is the Starliner capsule. First time in over 15 years that we will finally get a dual-engine Centaur for launching, chat, which is absolutely beautiful. What I wanted to bring up with this is talking about why Boeing Starliner is using a dual Centaur upper stage. Which is actually pretty interesting, because you have to understand that the Atlas V is absolutely capable of putting Boeing up on a single engine Centaur, right? However, in order to achieve proper abort scenarios throughout the entire ascent phase from main engine start, hey, it's the name of our podcast, main engine start all the way through second stage engine cutoff, they have abort scenarios throughout that entire regime. And so it's really kind of interesting. The Atlas V with Boeing Starliner on board takes a very specific and actually customized trajectory in order to allow it to safely abort during that entire flight profile. They actually take a very shallow ascent profile. You know, most boosters, right? Most boosters will come up, they'll loft, right? They'll actually have second stage engine or engine ignition right after separation, and then it'll keep boosting forward. And usually a lot of them, especially with heavier payloads, they'll kind of sink back into the atmosphere, especially with one RL10 that's really low TWR, thrust to weight ratio. They'll actually kind of fall back to Earth a little bit before they actually continue on and circularize at the desired altitude. That's not actually what happens with Starliner. Atlas V takes a very shallow ascent profile, meaning it basically comes up and immediately like turns over and starts getting horizontal velocity very quickly. That is in order to keep the G loads acceptable for the capsule and of course the humans on board, right? And then with that, in order to stay in line with their abort scenario, they have to have two engines in order to boost them back up to an acceptable altitude, right? Even at second stage cutoff, right? After MECO, the booster, or when the capsule separates, it's still on a suborbital trajectory. Again, this is also for abort scenarios, in case they don't actually, if they have off nominal performance on either engines, right? Or on either stages. So it actually takes the capsule another 15 minutes of constant burning with their orbital maneuvering system, which is basically their RCS. Takes them a 15-minute burn to actually get into the normal insertion orbit to actually catch up to the space station. Last thing, Boeing Starliner team is ready for OFT, chat. They have done the final mission software data upload. They've interior closeouts, window inspection, side hatch closed, Starliner configured for launch. Check. OFT set to launch December 20th at 6:36 a.m. Eastern Time. Be there or be square, chat. Be there or be square. So that's the last thing I want to end on. Everything else is absolutely brilliant and beautiful. But that will, I guess, conclude the first main engine start. Episode 1, chat. 1 hour and 7 minutes. Basically right on the schedule that I was aiming for. Seriously, guys, this was just the first main engine start podcast segment thing, whatever you want to call it. That I've done. This is the beginning of it. If this is something that you enjoy and want to see more of, please let me know. I'm also fully up and open to suggestions on how to make it better. This is a new thing. It's a chat-led thing. Let me know, chat. But I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it, talking space, and I want to do more of this.